Welcome to Board Games and Chill. My name is Marcus and today I'll be doing another playthrough of the Ugly Gryphon Inn, this time with the Little Beak Guesthouse. The Little Beak Guesthouse expansion adds 5 new patrons to the patron deck, and you also have to fill the guesthouse with 3 patrons with a maximum of a single quirk for each quirk. Setting the guesthouse to the top left, I will shuffle the deck and get started. Okay, so starting off we have the Sensitive Hunter, the Teetotal Nun, the Charitable Giant and the Pious Paladin. The Sensitive Hunter requires more beer than food in the inn. So because we have 3 beers preferences currently in the bar, it might be a safe bet to use the Sensitive Hunter. The Teetotal Nun requires food either side of it and no beer either side of it. So I definitely wouldn't play the Teetotal Nun this time. And the Charitable Giant requires the adjacency of up to 3 beer or 3 food, which might be okay, especially when we're starting completely afresh. The Pious Paladin is a new patron from the Little Beak Guesthouse expansion, and has both beer and food preferences. The Paladin will get irked if he is placed on the 3rd or the 6th floor, and when he does get irked, he only irks the patron in the floor below him, but does not leave. We currently have 2 noise quirks at the bar, but no one gets irked by noise, so it doesn't matter too much. All 3 out of 4 are irked by fighting, so we need to make sure that we don't get 3 fighting quirks at the bar. I think the Pious Paladin is a good first patron because he won't get irked because he's on the 1st floor. And he also is only irked by fighting, and he's the only person in the bar with a fighting quirk. So we have no risk of causing him to irk. So I think that's what I'll do. I'll draw the next card because I know that he is already safe. So we have the Indecisive Doppelganger, which gets irked if there is 4 or more food in the inn, and only shapeshifts into someone else, where you replace it with another card from the patron deck, and the Indecisive Doppelganger goes on the bottom, so we don't actually lose him. We can actually put the Charitable Giant in the Little Beak Guesthouse. That way we don't have that restriction of adjacency in the main inn. So I think that's what I'll do. And because we placed the Charitable Giant inside the Little Beak Guesthouse, we only check the irks of the guesthouse itself and not the main inn. And we know that the Charitable Giant is safe because he's the only one inside the guesthouse, so there's only 1 beer and no other adjacency. So we can just draw the next card. We do have 3 noise quirks in the bar, and because it would irk any noise patrons, it would only affect the patrons inside the main inn and not the guest house. But because in the main inn we only have someone affected by a fighting irk, the noise quirks do not affect us. The Clumsy Wizard will be pretty safe to play on either one, so we can either add the Clumsy Wizard to the Little Beak Guesthouse or to the main inn. If we place the Clumsy Wizard into the guest house, because we'll be placing from the top down, so we'd be placing the Clumsy Wizard on the 2nd floor because the Charitable Giant is on the 3rd floor, the wizard will actually not irk because he won't be at the top of the inn. But even if the Clumsy Wizard is in the main inn, his irk will only shuffle all of the patrons below him, which would not change the order or do anything at all. So I think we can just place him in the main inn. And because the wizard is the top, let's just say we shuffle the bottom 3 patrons, in which case the Pious Paladin doesn't move, and then the Pious Paladin is on the 1st floor, so he does not irk either. Then we can just draw from the next deck. The Boastful Bard also has both beer and food preferences. Once again, he has a noise quirk, so we do get 3 matching noise quirks, but we have no one irked by noise in the main inn. The Boastful Bard has an interesting irk, where he gets irked if the person above him or below him have a alliterative name. So both the first name and the second name begin with the same letter. In which case, at the moment, We don't have any with those at all, so we're pretty safe to play him wherever we want. He is also irked by noise, so it might be worth placing him in the Little Beak Guesthouse so that he doesn't potentially get irked by any more patrons that join the bar with the noise quirk. So let's move the Boastful Bard into the Little Beak Guesthouse at the bottom there. Checking the irks of the guesthouse, we have no 3 that are food or beer preferences that are adjacent, and the Chatterwood Giant does not have an alliterative name, so we are safe to draw the next card. We have no matching quirks. In order to fill the Little Beak Guesthouse, we need one more person that has to have a food preference to not irk the Charitable Giant, and they have to have a fighting quirk. The Indecisive Doppelganger would be perfect to place in the guest house because they will not be able to irk because you cannot have more than 3 food preferences. While the Doppelganger's irk isn't necessarily bad, it can disrupt things or can be risky if played in the main inn. So let's do that then. Checking the guest house irks, we have no adjacency for 3 matching beer or food preferences. The Boastful Bard is safe because both people do not have alliterative names, and there's only 2 food preferences in the little guest house. So we can just draw the next card. Now the Rusty Ranger could be a good person to play again in the main inn, because he only irks if there are more than 3 beer at the bar, and currently we only have 1. And placed in floor 3, if he does get irked by, say, noise, he will be only irking the patron 2 rooms below him, which will be the Pious Paladin. And now the Pious Paladin's irk is he stays in his room and he irks the person below him, and because there's no one below him, it wouldn't do anything. So let's go ahead and do that. Checking the irks from the main inn. Like I said a moment ago, there is less than 3 beer at the bar, the wizard is no longer at the top of the inn, and the paladin is on the ground floor, the first floor. So we can just draw the next card. So now we have 2 smell quirks and 2 noise quirks. So there is a risk for the next patron to either irk the smell or the noise people in the main inn. It's fine if we irk people with noise because the Rusty Ranger will only irk the paladin, which will not irk anyone else. Even if we get the matching smell quirks, all that will happen with the wizard is that he will shuffle the 3 patrons below him, which will also not affect anything. So I think it's safe to say we are safe whoever we play. Currently we have 3 beer preferences and only 1 food preference in the inn, which means the Sensitive Hunter could be someone good to play because we have so much more beer than food. Likewise with the Stressed Satyr, there's plenty of beer in the inn, so they won't irk. So I think I'll just play the Stressed Satyr. And I can draw the next card from the deck, because all of these are fine. Next, the Bunny Prince. Now the Bunny Prince will irk if there is more beer than food, in which case we do, so we can't really play the Bunny Prince at this point in time. The Bunny Prince does bring an extra noise quirk, so we have 3 matching noise quirks, which affects the Rusty Ranger, so he will irk the patron 2 floors below, and the Pious Paladin will irk the patron below him, which won't do anything. If we do play the Teetotal Nun, because the Stressed Satire has a food preference, the next round we can also play the Bunny Prince, in which case we won't be able to play the Sensitive Hunter, but we do get to play more cards. So I think that's what we shall do. Checking the irks, there is no beer above or below. There is plenty of beer in the inn. There is less than 3 beer at the bar, and the wizard is not at the top, and the paladin is on the ground floor. So we can just draw the next card from the deck. The Drunken Dwarf will instantly irk if he's been placed in the inn, because there are already 3 beer preferences and he will add 1 more to that. So he will end up leaving straight away and removing the top card from the game. If we do play the Bunny Prince, which we should do because he's the only one with a food preference to be played on the other side of the teetotal nun, it does mean that it leaves us with 3 beer preferences at the bar, which will irk the Rusty Ranger, but it doesn't matter because he will be shooting an arrow to the Pious Paladin, and the Pious Paladin will not irk anyone else. So we can just go ahead and play the Bunny Prince. We currently now have 4 food and 3 beer, so we have more food than beer in the inn, so the Bunny Prince is safe. The teetotal nun, there is food on either side. There is plenty of beer in the inn. Now there is 3 beer at the bar, so he will irk, which will then again, it will just irk the paladin and irk no one else. Clumsy Wizard is not at the top of the inn, and the paladin is on the first floor. So we can just draw the next card. We do have 3 matching noise quirks, and the only person in with a noise irk is Rusty Ranger, which once again affects the Pious Paladin, which affects no one. I think it's safe to play the Goblin Triplet, at least for the time being. There's always a risk if the other Goblin Triplet appears with the double fighting quirk, that would have quite a bad effect on there, but fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Because he's the only goblin in the inn, he won't get irked. And he does add another food preference to the rest so that we have less risk of losing the Bunny Prince. So let's do that. So there's only 1 goblin triplet in the inn. There is more food than beer. There is food on either side. There is plenty of beer in the inn. There is 3 beer at the bar, but that will affect the paladin, which affects no one. Clumsy Wizard is not at the top, and the paladin is on the ground floor, so we can just draw the next card. The Ornery Oracle is an interesting card because if they do get irked, if they are next to 2 patrons that have at least 2 or more types of quirks, although they leave, they do allow you to see the top 2 cards of the deck. It allows you to place one on top and one at the bottom, which could potentially alleviate some risk, especially if you are hoping not to get a particular matching quirk because of the Goblin Triplets. If we do play the Ornery Oracle now, it would mean we would need someone with a noise quirk to play on the other side. I think we should probably play the Time Mage because it will reduce the risk of getting irked by smell with 3 matching smell quirks next round. And currently he won't be irking because we currently have 3, 4, 5 food, and he will add versus 4 beer. So I think that'll keep the Bunny Prince safe, but also won't be requiring to shuffle the patrons in the bar into the deck. So let's go ahead and do that. So there is not an equal number of food and beer. There is only 1 goblin triplet. There is currently more food than beer. There is food on either side. There is beer in the inn. There are 3 or more beer at the bar, so Rusty Ranger irks the paladin, which irks no one. And the Clumsy Wizard is not at the top. And the Pious Paladin is on the ground floor. So we can just draw the next card. The Bloody Barbarian would be very good to play because the food will add to the difference in the food and beer, which means it would prevent the Time Mage from irking and shuffling these in, which would potentially ruin the Bloody Barbarian. Although since he will be checked beforehand, he would be still fairly safe. Plus there are already 3 patrons with beer preference in the bar, so currently he has no risk of being irked. So let's do that. So checking irks, there is plenty of beer at the bar. There is 3, 4, 5, 6 food and 4 beer. There's 1 goblin at the inn. There are more food than beer. There is food on either side. There is beer in the inn. There is It's more than 3 beer at the bar, but will just affect the paladin, which affects no one. Clumsy wizard is not at the top, and the paladin is on the ground floor, so we can just draw the next card. So we do have the sleepy summoner, which only gets irked if they have someone with a noise quirk above or below. Bloody Barbarian does not, so we can play the sleepy summoner, and it will add to that food count. We will also be reducing the risk of not getting 3 matching smell quirks the next round. So let's do that. So we have no noise above or below, there is beer at the bar, there is more food than beer, there is 1 goblin, there is more food than beer, there is food on either side, there is beer at the inn, there is 3 or more at the bar, which affects the paladin, which affects no one. Wizard is not at the top, and the pious paladin is not at the 3rd or the 6th floors. So you can draw the next card. This is where things can get messy, since the goblin has double a fighting quirk, which means we do have 3 matching fighting quirks. So we'll have a look. So from the top to bottom, the goblin triplet gets irked, and he leaves with all the other goblins, and luckily we only have 1 goblin there, so the goblin does leave. And next we have the teetotal nun, which leaves and doesn't do anything else. And lastly we have the pious paladin, who will irk the person below him, which doesn't matter. Luckily that wasn't too bad, so we're actually fairly safe with having matching fighting quirks now, because the only one that's affected is the pious paladin. We still can't play the sensitive hunter because we currently have 5 food and 4 beer. Well, playing him will match the number of beer, so it'll be matching, which would then run the risk of the time mage and the bunny prince potentially irking in the future. I think we should add the goblin triplet, because that will build more of a difference between the food and the beer, and because the number of beer preferences at the bar does not affect us at all. So let's do that. Checking the quirks. There's only 1 goblin in the inn, no noise above or below, there is beer at the bar. We do not have an equal number of food and beer, because we have 6 food and 4 beer. There is more food than beer, and there is beer in the inn. There are more than 3 beer at the bar. There are 3 or more at the bar, so it affects the paladin, which affects no one. Clumsy wizard is not at the top, and the pious paladin is on the ground floor. So we can just draw a next card. The goblin triplet, which means we do get a triple smell quirk, which does send the goblin triplet we just placed packing back. And we also irk the bunny prince, so the bunny prince leaves, and all patrons in the inn irked by noise leave as well. So the bunny prince leaves, and then the sleepy summoner will leave as well. The rusty ranger will also leave, and the wizard will just shuffle the pious paladin, which will not change the order. So let's check how many patrons have left. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can have 2 more leave before we lose, so we are just hanging in there. But at the very least, we do not get affected by any smell quirks anymore, because it's just the clumsy wizard that gets affected. Currently we do have 3 food and 3 beer, so the time mage will do a shuffle. So if we play the sensitive hunter, we can start having more beer than food, which means we can start playing more beer patrons or than food patrons, since we've already lost the bunny prince. The only thing we need to keep in mind is the time mage, so we can either choose to go food preferences or beer preferences, and because we have many more beer preferences, it might be worth playing the sensitive hunter and then focusing on the beer. So that's what I shall do. So we have more beer than food. So we have 4 beer and 3 food. There is still beer at the bar. There is not an equal number of food and beer preferences. There is still beer at the inn, Wizard is not at the top, and the paladin is on the ground floor. So we can just draw the next card. So the jobless assassin gets irked if they're next to one of the goblin triplets, and they will remove the bottom patron from the inn, which would be the pious paladin, if they do get irked. So we just need to make sure, since we've already lost 2 of the goblin triplets, we just don't play them next to this one. We do have 3 smell quirks, but that doesn't affect anyone because all it does is make the wizard shuffle the pious paladin around. It'd probably be worth getting rid of one of these fighting quirk patrons. Problem is, if we play the drunken dwarf, he will immediately leave the inn, and we don't have that much leeway left for those leaving. We currently have 4 patrons left in the patron deck. We could play the jobless assassin, which will mean that we will have an equal number of food and beer, which means the sensitive hunter will be just safe because we will have 1, 2, 3, 4 food and 4 beer, but the time mage will shuffle the remaining ones back in the deck, which won't be too bad, I think. So long as we get at least 1 person in the bar with beer, we should be okay in future rounds. So I think that's what I'll do, because I don't want to lose the sensitive hunter if we do match 3 fighting quirks. So the jobless assassin is not next to a goblin triplet. We have a matching number of food and beer. So there is beer at the bar, and since there is a matching, we shuffle these patrons back into the deck. There is beer in the inn, wizard is not at the top of the deck, and the paladin is on the ground floor. So we can just draw the next 3 or 4 patrons from the deck. So we do have 2 smell quirks and 2 fighting quirks. So no quirks are done, but we do have the risk of the smell irking as well as the fighting irking. And if the fighting irks, then the sensitive hunter will also remove anyone with smell quirks, which would just be the clumsy wizard, in which case we would lose because 2 people have left. So either way, we will be kind of screwed if we lose any of them, but we don't have much of a choice. So we'll just have to play a patron which does not leave themselves. If we play the oracle, we can play the fighting next round because we have plenty of fighting, and the jobless assassin is also a fighting quirk. So the ordinary oracle wouldn't have to leave. The wall bearer is fairly safe, but it would mean that we would have less of a chance to play the oracle. So I think playing the oracle now is the best bet. Okay. So at the top, the oracle is currently adjacent to only 1 type of quirk, which is just the fighting. The jobless assassin is not next to any goblins. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beer and 4 food, so the sensitive hunter is okay. There is beer at the bar for the barbarian, and there is not an equal amount of food and beer time mage, and there is beer at the inn, which is not at the top, and the paladin is on the bottom. So we can just draw the next card and hope that it's not a fighting quirk. Which it is not, it is a noise quirk, which is good. Which goblin was it that we have left? Let's see. We have one with 2 smell quirks, and if we get a smell quirk, we will lose. So we need to make sure we don't get that. Unfortunately, if we play the lazy sorcerer, they will irk immediately and leave immediately. We have 2 patrons left. So there's a 50-50% chance of getting the goblin next round. So if we play the drunken dwarf, we will lose him, which puts us right on the cusp, but it will give us a 50-50 chance of removing the goblin from the game. So we can't play the fasting monk because they will cause the oracle to irk. So the oracle will leave. It would mean that we get to see who's on the top and the bottom, which could be beneficial, but it does mean that because the oracle is left, the fasting monk will also be next to someone with a food preference, so the monk will leave next round, so we would lose. We could play the lazy sorcerer, but they will immediately leave, and they would swap the pious paladin with their position before they do, which will be okay because the pious paladin will now be on the 8th floor, so they will not get irked, and they will have a fighting quirk. So the oracle would not leave either, and that would mean we won't have another smell irk here, so we would be safe if we do get the goblin. I do not know whether the other one has a fighting quirk. I think that might be safer at mitigating risk than relying on a 50-50% chance, because I always lose the 50-50. So if I did use the drunken dwarf, I'd be hoping that the top card is the 50-50. The war bear, if I play the war bear, I would hope that the bottom card will be the goblin. The problem is, if I get the goblin next round, the round after, I'd still have to play the lazy sorcerer in either case to not get irked. So I think lazy sorcerer really is my only option. So I will play lazy sorcerer. They are on the 5th floor or higher, so they will swap places with the patron of the inn before leaving. So they will go there. Pious paladin will go at the top, which means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 patrons have left. We start again at the pious paladin. So the paladin is on the 8th floor, so he is not irked. The oracle is between 2 fighting quirks, which means that they are safe. Now, the jobless assassin is not next to a goblin. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 food, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beer. There is more beer than food, so the sensitive hunter is safe. There's currently beer at the bar, so the barbarian is okay. There is more beer than food, so the time mage doesn't irk. And there is beer at the inn, and the clumsy wizard is not at the top. So we can draw the next card, which is the goblin triplet, which means that we still don't have any matching quirks, which is good, which means we are safe for another round. We just need to survive whatever card that is. I cannot remember for the life of me. We cannot play the fasting monk because the pious paladin has a food preference. We can play the goblin triplet, which would alleviate any risk of there being a smell quirk over there, but there's always the risk of a fighting quirk being there as well, which would be just as bad. And we cannot play the drunken dwarf because he will leave and we will lose. We can either play the war bear or the goblin triplet. I feel like there is a lower risk of getting a smell quirk, I hope. So I might just play the war bear, in which case I shall just do that. So there is food in the inn. The paladin is on the 8th floor. The oracle is between 2 fighting quirks. Assassin is not next to a goblin. Since there is more beer than food, there is now 6 beer and 4 food. There is beer at the bar. There is not an equal food and beer. There is beer in the inn, and the wizard is at the bottom. So we can draw the final card and see if we survive the bar phase. So the Distressed Druid is the final patron from the expansion that has both smell and noise quirks, which means we do irk all smell patrons on the final round, which means that the jobless assassin will leave, remove the bottom patron from the inn, from the game. Not discarded, but I think they are removed from the game, which means they are separate. And then we have and that is it. And then we have lost 8 patrons. So in the final round we lost, unfortunately. If it wasn't the Distress Druid, it's a patron that I hadn't seen before, so I didn't know their quirks. But if it wasn't them, we would have at least satisfied the guest house criteria, and we would have made the number of things. So I was unlucky at the end. I think I need to play a bit more with the Little Beak expansion so I can get to know some of the new patrons a bit better. I didn't realise there was one with 2 quirks, but I'll have to give it another go next time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. If you're interested in checking out playthroughs of the other expansions, please check out my previous one here. Other than that, I hope to see you in the next one.